Static websites are boring. We all love cool websites. I love cool websites. Those animated, sleek websites and applications. I love them and I know you love them. And that's why we're here today. We want to be the developers that know how to create sleek and cool animations. So in this video, you will learn how to animate elements with just CSS. From over effects to complex keyframes animations, we'll cover everything step by step. So stick to the end and let's get right in. First, we start with CSS transitions. CSS transitions allows properties to change over time when a user interacts with an element. So with transitions, there would most likely be a need for the user to do something, to interact. So when user interacts and the change happens, transitions help those changes to happen over time. Without transitions, the change will just happen. For example, let's take a look at my code. So I have a simple button in my container and I have my general styles here. I'm styling my body, I'm styling the container, I'm styling my button as well. So let me go live. All right, so we have this button that says over me. We are not doing anything when the button overs, so let's just add some over styling here. So now when the button overs, we are increasing the style and we are changing the background color to a fader version of orange. So now let's check it. When we over it, we can see that the button increases by size, it transforms, and we can also see that the background color changes. But if you notice, the change just happened instantly. It just goes, I don't know, did anybody get that? It just goes suddenly. And that's where transitions come in, right? Transition help those things to look better. Now we have some transition property. So if you want to create a transition on this, we have some transition properties. We have transition property, we have transition duration, transition timing function, transition delay, and all of that. But first of all, let's declare the transition property. Transition property is the properties you want that transition to be on. In our case, we want to have a transition on this, our transform and background color. But because it's more than one, you can just put all here. So there will be a transition property on all, but normally you might want to dictate it one by one. So we want transition property on transform, and we also want transition property on background color. And next thing is the transition duration. The transition duration defines how long the transition should take. So for example, if we have maybe 2 seconds here, you will notice a change in the way things work now. If I over, you can see that it just doesn't go suddenly, it goes slowly. And now this makes so much sense because now it's slicker, and when it's going back, it goes slowly again, as opposed to the initial blast goes one that we had. This is way much better, and you can increase the duration. To be fair, 2 seconds is already a bit too long, but if I give it 5 seconds, you will see that it will take a bit longer. If I over it takes 5 seconds, and when I remove the over effect, it goes back like that. So let's change this back to 2 seconds, and then we have the right. We have the transition delay property. The transition delay property, it specifies a delay before the transition begins. If you want a pause before your transition begins, then your transition delay is what you use to dictate that. So here, if I have my transition delay and I give it 1 second, so when I over this button for 1 second, there will be a pause like this. So it stays for 1 second before it starts moving. If I over, it stays for 1 second before it starts moving. Let me increase it very well to 5 seconds so you can see the delay. All right, let's over. You can see it's pausing for 5 seconds, and then finally it transitions. So that's what the delay is for here. And then we have the transition timing function. It specifies how the transition progresses over time. So over the period of these 2 seconds, how do you want the transition to progress? Do you want it to move at a constant speed? Do you want it to be slow at first, then later be fast? Do you want it to be fast at first and then later be slow? So we have different timing function that we can give to our transition timing function property. We have the ease, which is the default. It starts slow, it speeds up, and then it slows down. And we have linear, where it moves at constant speed. We have ease in and out. It starts slow and then it speed up. Then we have ease out. Let's check our ease out. Transition timing function. Let's give it ease out. You see with ease out, it will start slow. It will start fast and then it will slow down. It goes fast, and then it slows down towards the end. and then we can just give it linear if we want it to move at constant speed, right? But then there's a shortcut to all of this. For all of this, we can just use, let me comment this out, and we can just use the shortcut syntax, which is the transition, where you can call everything at once. You can call the property, you can call the duration, you can call the timing function, and you can call the delay. So let's do that instead of having 4 lines. So we have transform, and then, oh my god, sorry guys, we have transition, and the property we are calling it on, first of all, is the transform to 1 second, and we're also calling it on background. I want the background to have a longer duration. So what we are saying here now with this shortcut, we are declaring multiple transitions. This is the first one, transform 0.5 second, is in and out. There is no delay. We are not dictating a delay here, and we are not dictating a time. We're dictating a timing function, but we are not dictating a delay. If we want it to have a delay, we just put the delay at the back here. So transform 0.4 second, is in and out, then 1 second with the background color 0.3 second, is in and out, background color. So that way we get to clear all of these, and it will still work the same way. So look at that. So that's the point of CSS transitioning. Instead of having our changes to be instant, transitions gives us the ability to create some visually appealing effect to those changes. Let me give one more example for transitions before we move into animation. So if, for example, we have a new box right under our button, and this box is a blue colored box. It has a 0.5 opacity border radius, and when we hover it, the opacity increase and it rotates to about 15 degrees. So if you go here now, because there's no transition on it yet, of course the over is going to work, but it's not going to be visually appealing. For example, look at it. Look at that. It's too sharp. It doesn't give that effect. So let's add a transition. We are using the shortcut. So we are doing transition. The property we are transitioning is, first of all, the opacity. So we want that to go with a duration of 1 second, and what's an is in and out. And we also want to have the transition on the transform property. So that should go over 0.5 seconds, is in and out as well, no delay. So now if you go here now, you can see it goes smoothly. It's not sharp. It's not the way it was doing before. Look at that. That is with which it works, right? So let me give this 1 second as well. So when you come here, you can see your box. It goes in, it goes out. What if we want more complex animations? Now that's where keyframes come in. CSS Animations uses keyframes to define how an element changes over time. Unlike transitioning, however, transitions, animations don't need a trigger. The user doesn't have to do anything. With transition, the user has to do something. Like I have to over this for that transition to take place. But with animations, the user does not. There's no user action required. Your animation can just work. So this is our key syntax here. You usually define a from or to, the starting state where you want the animation to start from, and the to will contain the ending state where you want the animation to end. Or if your animation has multiple steps, you can dictate as many steps. So here we have 0%, which is the initial state of the animation, and 50% midway state, and 100% final state. You can customize your animation anyhow. So you can do 10%. When the animation reaches 40%, I want that. Is up to you. Just like transitions, animations also have properties. All right, to test out animations, we have this H1 hello world, and it's just sitting in the middle of our page here with colored green. We want to add some animations on this element, right? So let's get started. The first thing is to define your animation. We already saw the key syntaxes that we can use to define our animation. So I have my syntax here. It says keyframes animation name. Let me give this animation name sliding, because we want it to slide in actually. So it has a from and it has to. So we want it to start from the side, from the far end of one of the sides. So I'm giving it a transform translate X, maybe 400 pixel, minus 400 pixel rather, because we want it to start from the far end. So minus 400 pixel, and we want it to go back to its normal position. So it's going to go back to transform translate X, translate X 0. All right, so now we have to call this animation that we created, this sliding animation, and let's change the opacity too. So from opacity 0, that is, it should be faded at first, and then finally it should be well visible, to opacity 1. Now let's apply this sliding animation on our hello world. The first thing we call is the animation name rather. So animation name is sliding. Remember, it's going to be our animation. So if you call the animation name alone, it will not work because you need to specify a duration. So the next thing property is animation duration. So animation name and animation duration are very important properties that you have to call for your animation to work. So we give it an animation duration 2 seconds. Can you see that? Let me increase the duration so you can see the way it's sliding from the left. Is this the left or the right? From the left. Look at that. It just slid in like that. And that is what we want. It's coming in and then it resumes at the center where it was originally. So we also have other animation properties, just like we have transition delay. We also have animation delay. So we can call our animation delay. So we have animation delay. That is, you can delay your animation before it starts. Let's give this 1 second. So if you come on your page, let me refresh so you can see. The animation pauses for 1 second before it starts. Let me give it a higher time duration so you can see. Animation delay 5 seconds. You will notice that it waits for 5 seconds and then it starts. So it delays for 5 seconds, but let's reduce it back to 1 second. Another animation property that we have is the animation timing function. It works the same way as the transition timing function. So it is just how we dictate. Is a way we dictate how we want to dictate how the animation progresses over time during its duration. So during this 5 seconds, how do you want it to be fast at first, and do you want it to be slow at first and then become fast, or do we want it to start fast and then go slow, or do we want it to be linear across board? So yeah, I'm going to give it ease. So I'm going to give it ease. That is, I want it to start slow, and then I want it to speed up, and then I want it to slow down towards the end again. So yeah, look at that. It starts slow, then speeds up, then slows down again. I'm giving more duration so that we can see how it moves. So it starts slow, then it speeds up, and then it slows down again. All right, let me return my duration back to 5 seconds. The next one here would be the animation direction. So the animation direction, simply the direction you want the animation to go, and it can take in different properties. It can either be normal, alternate, reverse. So if I say it should be normal, our animation will go normally. It will come from the position it's coming from. But if I change it back to reverse, that means the animation will come from the opposite side, right? It's going to reverse. So let's check it. Let me refresh. Notice that instead of coming from here to here, it comes from here to instead. That's because the animation direction is on reverse. I think one thing I should have done before this is the animation iteration count. That is also important. Animation iteration count means how many times you want the animations to flow. So if you want it, currently by default it just goes once, but you can give it a count. You can say you want it to go 3 times. So without doing anything, your animation will run 3 different times, right? 1, then 2, then 3. Let me reduce this animation duration so we can be faster. All right, so our animation direction is reverse, but we can also give it alternate. Alternate means it will start from the normal place, and then the next count will be from the opposite direction, and then back and forth like that. So if I give it animation direction alternate, so it first goes from left to right, and then back like that. So it's alternating directions. And with the iteration count, we can specify any number we want, and we can also specify infinite. Infinite means that the animation will not stop running. So you just keep going and coming, because of course animation direction is alternate, so it's going and coming and going and coming infinitely, right? But let me change this back to 1, and let me change this back to normal. All right, next up is the animation fill mode. So this one is a bit difficult to understand, but it's also not ununderstandable. So the animation fill mode, it defines how an animated element should apply styles before and after the animation runs. Right now, we notice that our animation, once the animation finishes running, my hello world goes back to its normal original position, right? But animation fill mode helps us to change that, right? So by default it is none, and that's why element is not retaining any style from the animation. Once the animation is done, it's going back to its own normal position, but we can change that. And because I want you to see it, let me just declare some color here. On the animation from, let me give it red, and then on two, let me give it yellow. No, yellow. All right, so let's use that to check. So your animation fill mode can either be none, forwards, backwards, or both. If it is forward, if you put animation fill mode forward, it means that after the animation ends, the element retains the final keyframe style. So this last final keyframe style, the one at 2, or if you are using degrees, the last one, your element will retain that style. So in our case here, once this animation is done, you will see that the element will retain all the styles. It will not go back to green. It will stay on yellow. It will stay on opacity 1. It will stay on this transform property. So let's go and declare it. Animation fill mode, we want forwards. We can either make it none, which is the default, but let's give it forwards. And let's go again. All right, look at that. Our animation runs from red rather, to yellow. And if you notice, it's not going back to its original color, which is green. It stays on the last animated state, which is color yellow, right? And that's what animation fill mode does. If we use backwards, the element will apply the animation, the keyframe, the first keyframe style. So all of this, the element will apply it during the delay period before the animation starts. The element will have this as its initial styling. In our case, we probably wouldn't see it. I've changed the delay to 5 seconds so we can see it. But here we have opacity 0, so it won't be visible. Let me change the opacity 1 very quickly so that we can see how that backward fill mode works. Let me change this also to -200. You'll notice that it initially has this from style before it then picks up the animation. Yeah, so that's backward. And you can even have both. That would combine both forwards and backwards. And by default, you can have none. And you don't even have to specify it. Once you don't specify anything, it will just be none by default. So let me change this back to 0 opacity and this back to -400. So we have all, I think these are the core 7 animation styles. But just like transitions, animations also have a shortcut. Should we call it shortcuts? A short form. So instead of specifying all 7 of them on different line, you can just go on one single line. So it will take animation, will first take name, duration, timing function, delay. Let's just say animation, and then the first thing you have to declare there is the name. Sliding, you can see it takes in the name, and this is the duration, this is the timing function, this is the delay, this is the iteration count, this is the animation direction, and the last one here is the animation fill mode. So we have all 7 on the same line, and we get our animation back normally. If we refresh, look at that. So we have our animation. This 5-second delay is too long. Let me just give it 3 seconds. No, in fact, 1 second delay. The animation go over a period of 3 seconds, and let the iteration be infinite. Let it go on and on as we go on in this video. All right, so let's do a few more animations before we round up. Let's create a rotation animation. So let's create another keyframe. Let's create keyframes. At keyframes, rotate. So we want our element to rotate. So it starts from 0 degree and it ends at 360 degree. And in fact, now that we are here, let us remove all of this. Let's clean this up. And we shouldn't even specify the animation directly on the element in case we want to use it for another element. We don't want to keep writing this line over again. So let's just put it in a class of sliding. Let's call this animation on this class. Let's remove it from here. And let me go back to the element and give it a class sliding. Let me give it a class sliding, and our animation should still work. In fact, it's still working in the background. It should still keep working. So that way we can give another element this sliding class and not have to write again. All right, so we have our rotate. It's starting from transforming from 0 degree to 360 degree. That means we want it to like go round, around, around, over and over again. So let's create a div box here. I think I have already styled my box here. All right, let me create a div here that takes in, let me put the name rotate in here. So yeah, we have a div of class box so that it looks like a box, and we are calling that rotate class. We have not created the rotate class, so let's create a .rotate class that takes in this animation and applies it. All right, why are you not working? All right, so we have our rotate class here. Look at that. My lady is rotating on and on infinitely. Let's create that one. This looks like quite some fun. Let's create one that wiggles, wiggle, 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 wiggle. All right, let's create another. At keyframes, this one is wiggle. Let's give it a name, wiggle. So with wiggle, We want it to just keep wiggling. Don't rotate, but wiggle. So from 0%, this time around we are using percentage. So 0%, we are doing our transform. We are transforming from rotate 0 degree. We are rotating 0 degree. And let me just copy and paste that. Or let's see if Copilot will help me out. At 25 degree, we want to rotate to 10. Let's see if this looks nice. Excuse me, okay, we've not called the box. All right, so we should have another div that calls, let's put wiggle in the middle here, and this should call class box and class wiggle class box, and then wiggle class. Let's create the wiggle class. I don't think I've created this. All right, dot wiggle class. All right, animate wiggle 1 second. Let's give it ease in and out, and let's also give it infinite ease in and out. All right, look at that. All right, so this one is wiggling. Let's create the last one. Let's create bounce as keyframes. Let's create bounce. We want this particular box to bounce. So at 0%, all right, yeah, we can do this. At 0%, at 25%, at 50%, 80%, 100%, we want it to stay at translate y 0, and at 40%, we want it to stay at translate y minus 30 pixel, so that we want it to go up and then come down and then go up, that kind of a thing. All right, so let's check it in action. Do we have it here? I haven't called it. All right, let me create the class dot bounce class. All right, let's put the div in here. Okay, so we have a div class box bounce. Where's our div? All right, now look at that. This is literally bouncing. Last but not the least, this is the last one, I promise. Okay, so let's have a spin. I think that one might be cute, and we're going to use, let's do this. To save time, I've already done that. With my spin, my keyframe spin colors, we want like a spinner but with different colors. So at 0%, we are starting at 0 degree, and we're going to have 2 border colors. We're going to have our borders into 4 different parts. The first part will initially be red, and then transparent, and then blue, and then transparent. And when our animation is 25% gone, we want to rotate again to like 90 degree, and then switch the colors and switch the colors again. The middle colors are going to be transparent because I don't want them to meet, if that makes sense. So I've given my spinner some classes too, width, height, border, blah. So let's see how it looks. Let's call a divs. All right, so we have our div with class spinner now. Let's see how that looks. Look at our spinner. Look at it. It's changing color and it's rotating, and it looks so cute, by the way. So yeah, you can see we are able to animate. We're able to do all of this by ourselves, just using basic CSS animations. So now let's talk about libraries. Usually, as you go on, you'll most likely start to use libraries for your animation. And there's one cute, very cute CSS library I saw. I think animate.class or animate.style. Let's check it out. This is actually very cool. You can use this to add CSS animation. It's just a library. You don't have to stress. You don't have to create your frames and keyframes over and over. Look at that. Look at this is bounce. Look at how it bounces. And then that's flash. And this is Paul. Rubber band. I love this rubber band one. It's giving that rubber band vibe. Look at this, shake X, shake Y. This just makes so much sense, and it's very easy to use. You install it, or you can add it to your web page using a CDN. It's very cute. I think I used this somewhere before. So it's very, very cute to use. You just have to add the utility class, the delay class. So look at, just straight up, you don't have to do all the animations by yourself. You already have those animations here with this library, and you just get to call them, and you can control everything. You can control the iteration class. Just go through this documentation. Yes, and I love this part as well. Yeah, general best practices for animations, right? Animations look cool, but please don't overdo it. Don't overdo animations. Deteriorate the user experience. Yeah, so follow the rules. Just go on this website. I'll put this link in the description box. So you should avoid animating an element just for the sake of it. Your animation has to, keep in mind, animation has a clear, there has to be a clear intention. Just don't animate for animation's sake. Animations like attention seeker, if you're trying to seek the attention of a user, you can use animation in those cases. Entrance, exit animation. Look at this. Don't animate large objects. Don't animate root element like your body. Don't animate your body element. Don't animate your HTML, right? Also, avoid infinite animations. I know we are doing it here, but that's because I really want you to see what is going on. But avoid infinite animations by all means. Please avoid infinite animations. Also, you can't animate inline elements, overflow, and you can use this library with JavaScript. That's also the cute part. So that's it. You do not have any excuse for not using animation again at this point. I believe with this knowledge, you can now create smooth, nice, cool, user attention seeking animations, right? That will be good for your website, for your applications. Please, if you find this video helpful, like, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to turn on your notifications for more tech and coding content. See you in my next video. Bye.